everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mary if you're new here, and today we are going to be talking about all the books that I read in August. Sadly, August was quite a horrible reading month. I did end up reading 7 books, but I was practically in a reading slump for the majority of the month. It was not a fun time. I was not happy about it at all, but I'm happy to say that I think I'm finally over the hump and I'm back to reading as much as I typically do. So without further ado, we'll just hop into all of these books and talk about what I thought about them. Also, don't mind my voice. I am still getting over being sick. I've practically been sick all of August. Has not been a great time around here, but we're hoping my voice goes back to normal very, very soon. In the meantime, you've got congested Mary over here. So we started off the month pretty strong by reading The True Love Experiment by Christina and Lauren. I was reading this while recovering from my wisdom tooth surgery and had a blast. It was exactly what I needed in that moment. And so for that, I am giving this 4.5 stars. So this book is basically a part of the True Love Experiment story. So that book came out, I think, last year or the year before that. I really enjoyed that book. This is like the second book in that duology, I guess you could say, where it follows along Fizzy and a man named Connor. Forced proximity, friends to lovers, very much a slow burn romance. All you can want, basically, in a fun and exciting romance. And the spice was pretty spicy for especially a Christina and Lauren book. Typically their spice isn't very, I wouldn't say it's closed door, but it's also not like a lot of spicy romance books, but this one, it was pretty up there. But yeah, this was absolutely adorable. Everything I needed in that moment to read, and I highly, highly recommend. The next book I read was A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. This is the second book in the Darker Shades of Magic trilogy, and I read this in a vlog. I think it was my Reading 200 Pages a Day vlog, so I talk a lot about that book in that vlog. But I did end up giving this 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. Loved it a lot more than the first one, even though it wasn't as action-packed as the first book. I still really loved it. Loved getting to know the characters more, loved getting to understand all of the worlds more. A lot of the first book was me trying to figuring out all of the world building, and at this point I understood all of it, so I think that allowed me to enjoy the book a lot more. The ending was definitely a cliffhanger, a great one, but definitely a cliffhanger, and I can't wait to get into the third book. Next book I read was The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. I read it on my Kobo, and I ended up giving this a 4 stars. This I also read in my Read 200 Pages a Day challenge. I really liked this. So this is a YA romance. I wouldn't say it was as good as Better Than the Movies, but it was very good. It does have a trope that I generally do not like though, and that is like reliving the same day over and over again. I don't find that I really enjoy that kind of trope. I did like it in the book In a Holidays by Christina and Lauren. That one, I think they did it really well, and I do think that Lynn Painter did it really well in this story. In this context, it is the main character, Emily, reliving the same day over and over again, and that day is Valentine's Day. So it was fun, it was very cute, very rom-com-y vibes. I read it very fast, and this is kind of like I was trying to read something to get me kind of out of that reading slump, and this did help while I was reading it, but then I kind of went back into my slump afterwards. The next book I read was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, and this one I read in a couple different vlogs, so I'll link them down below if you want to watch them. But I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite a 5-star read. It didn't give me those like 5-star feelings that I get when I know when a book is 5 stars, but it was pretty darn close. This is definitely a book, and I feel like everyone says this, but it's definitely a book that I've never read before. Very, very unique, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. I loved that it explored so many different topics like platonic friendships or platonic relationships, like romantic relationships, trauma, kind of childhood and adulthood, and then obviously video games and that whole world. So you follow Sam and Sadie in this book kind of over the span of like 30-ish years, I would say, maybe a bit longer or shorter, and you kind of follow along their friendship as they meet and then as they grow together and they become video game developers together. It's a lot more than just that, but that is the basics that you need to know going into it. And yeah, I highly recommend this. I loved it. Some parts though dragged on a little bit for me, and that's why it wasn't really 5 stars, because I wasn't invested the whole way through. Nonetheless, very, very, very good book, and I highly recommend it. And I even bought it in hardback. I don't like hardcovers, so you know the dedication is there. The next book I read was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and I gave this 4 stars. I really struggled to read basically the first like 40 pages of this book, I would say. I started reading it, I believe, in June, put it down, tried picking it back up in July, put it back down, and then I picked it back up again because my sister wanted to read it. So she kind of buddy read it with me, and that pushed me to keep going. But once I got to, I think it was like chapter 10, so maybe like the 60-page mark, I started getting invested, and each volume throughout the story gets better and better. I love Mr. Darcy. I love Elizabeth. This is like the OG enemies to lovers romance, and it's crazy how a book that was written in the 1800s could be so relatable and so iconic even to this day. I can definitely understand why a lot of people say this is one of their favorite classics or one of their favorite romances. It is all of that packaged into such a small but mighty book, and loved it. So many topics about family dynamics, community, culture, society, love. So many topics explored in such a great way. And I mean, the romance is like the cherry on top. So once I finished Pride and Prejudice, it was nearing the end of August, and I honestly couldn't fathom trying to pick up anything else. I was really trying to finish a bunch of books that I'm in the middle of. Couldn't pick up any of them, so I just decided to go where I know I will read and be invested, and that is romance. Romance is always the type of story that gets me hooked and gets me reading passionately again. So I picked up The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. I've seen this all over the place. I know Haley Pham has talked about it a lot, so I picked it up to give it a try and absolutely adored it. So I'm giving The Bodyguard 4 stars, maybe 4.5, but I'm thinking 4 stars. I was so shocked at how much I love this book. The premise is kind of unique, where it's a female bodyguard bodyguarding a very famous male actor. Although the parts where the bodyguard part was actually happening, I didn't really like it that much. I don't know if I want to say it wasn't written well, but I just wasn't really invested in those parts. I just really liked the relationship dynamic and seeing them grow and get to know each other. And the characters were quite complex. Jack had a lot of trauma and history that Hannah kind of broke through the walls, and I loved Jack's family. The side characters were really great in the story, and yeah, it was just such a great read, and I think the book that finally was the catalyst that broke my reading slump. And then the last book I read was Waking Olivia by Elizabeth O'Rourke. Definitely ended up being not what I expected. There is definitely romance in it, but there is also kind of an underlying plot of like a murder mystery, a lot of childhood trauma, definitely a lot of heavy, hard hitting topics that come up that I just wasn't expecting. And so that kind of threw me off a little. Some of it I won't say I didn't really enjoy, but I just wasn't really interested in. Just kind of wanted something fun and easy to read, and that wasn't it. So definitely bad on my part for maybe not looking into the reviews or the book more than I did, but overall I still enjoyed it. Really loved Will's character. Olivia was good too, but I think Will was the winner in the character book for me. And I think overall I'm going to give this just a 3 stars. It was very dead center in my feelings towards books, and I would recommend it. I just would say know what you're going into before reading it and not expect it to be just like a fun, cute romance. Definitely a lot more than that. Those were all the books that I read in August. Definitely not as much as I typically read. Even though I was fighting a reading slump for most of the month, I would say it was a good reading month. I gave all of the books except for one 4 stars or up. I had one 5-star read, but I also had a lot of 4.5-star reads, and that is fantastic. So I am hoping I'm finally out of my reading slump, and September will be a great reading month. I am reinvigorated to read more. I also reorganized all my bookshelves. Kind of, you'll see in a little bit in the back. That video will be coming soon. So let me know what you guys read in August and what your favorite book was. And I hope to see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye.